All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. BlueMix virtual meetup and kind of an introduction to BlueMix today. So I hope everyone can hear me well. If not, you can type something in the group chat and I'll try to fix it. But with that, let's get started. So I'm going to share my screen here and we're going to show you some slides. All right. So the title of today's presentation is Achieving Developer here at IBM. And you can follow me on Twitter at Ryan J. Baxter. You can follow my blog at ryanjbaxter.com. I'm constantly posting things related to BlueMix for developers there all the time. So if you want to keep up to date on what's new and what I'm looking into from a developer point of view, feel free to follow me at those two places. So just so everyone realizes, today is not, we're not going to be talking about the band Nirvana. If you grew up in the are going to be talking about Nirvana in the way, in the sense of Buddhism. And the definition for Nirvana is described as extinguishing the fires that cause suffering. So we want to talk about how BlueMix can help you extinguish the fires that cause suffering for developers. So here's a good question for everyone. You know, taking the following couple of bullet points here, does this really sound like developer Nirvana to you? Basically, imagine you wanted to deploy an application to the cloud, right? And you had to go and install the runtime container and all the libraries necessary to deploy that application. Then install needed services, like if your application uses databases or has a mobile component to it or does messaging, stuff like that. And then once you've installed the services, you need to bind the services to the application, make sure all the ports and IPs are configured correctly, set up firewalls so that everything is nice and secure. We're going to have multiple instances of our application running at the same time, so we need to put a load balancer in front of everything and have dynamic routing so everything's distributed nice and evenly across all of our various instances of our application. We want layers of high availability, so if something goes south, something dies, it doesn't bring down the entire application. Logging, being able to see what's happening, logging down to a machine so that you can check in and see if there are problems, or maybe check in and see maybe someone's reporting an error and get a state of things as far as what your application's up to. Being able to monitor performance is also important, so you want to see if your application's using up all the CPU or consuming a ton of memory when it shouldn't be. And obviously you want to be able to scale your application up and down, right? We're talking about the cloud here, so one of the main benefits of the cloud is the elasticity as well. And then repeat all this stuff for development, test, and production. So I don't know about everyone else on the Hangout, but that doesn't really sound like Nirvana to me. I'd rather just be writing code because that's what I am. That's what I am, a developer. So BlueMix can help you out here, right? And BlueMix helps you achieve this developer Nirvana. And BlueMix, if you haven't heard of it already, is really a platform for running virtually any application in the cloud without having to worry about the hardware, software, or network. All of a sudden disappears when we talk about using BlueMix. And this definition is what we usually refer to as a platform as a service, or a PaaS. Yes, I know, another AAS term for you to remember. And it's similar to other platforms you might have heard of, such as Heroku, which is now owned by Salesforce, Google App Engine, OpenShift, which is Red Hat's PaaS offering, and Pivotal One, which is based on a very similar, actually the same open source project that BlueMix is. Concepts or platform as a service is kind of new to you. You're probably wondering, well, where does it fit in the cloud kind of stack? So BlueMix or any PaaS for that matter is usually software that's running on top of an infrastructure as a service layer. So in the BlueMix case, we're running on top of SoftLayer, and then your application runs on top of BlueMix. But you'll notice in the simple diagram here to the right that your application code has no you can't manipulate the underlying VM or do anything to the underlying machine that your application is running on. As a matter of fact, you know nothing about it, and that's done on purpose, right? The whole point of the platform as a service is to abstract away the underlying infrastructure as a service, and the reason for doing that is to really make your life as a developer a lot easier. So why not just use infrastructure as a service, right? It's a fairly new thing. It's kind of cool. It's very popular. You can get started really easy, and I agree, right? You can deploy your application to an image in an infrastructure as a service environment very easy, right? You can get very customized, pre-built images that have everything you need already installed on it. And it's just a matter of dropping your application code on there, and away you go. But really, where the PaaS layer shines is when you talk about the maintenance of that image or images over time. So things like OS updates, security updates, new versions of libraries, DNS and networking changes, configuration, maintenance of other services like databases, all this stuff is cost that you need to incur your responsibility. So take, for example, the Heartbleed bug that was out, about a month ago now. It was very much in the media and very much high awareness about it. And if you happen to have the version of OpenSSL installed that had the bug installed on the image that you had from your infrastructure as a service provider, it would be your responsibility to make sure that you upgrade that version of OpenSSL and make sure that you all the applications that are using Open point of view, it kind of sounds like a little bit of a scary nightmare. While it's probably something doable for developers, it's not something we want to do, right? It's not something we are good at or necessarily experts in. Whereas if you were using a platform as a service and a security bug like that came out, it'd be the provider of the platform as a service responsibility to fix that stuff and take care of it. And if we're talking about BlueMix, well, IBM has a bunch of IT experts that really know how to do this stuff very well. So a lot of this maintenance cost over time now disappears when you start to talk about platform as a service, which is really what the PaaS layer is all about. So what are the benefits to using BlueMix then, right? So we're really talking about saving time, and really by saving time, we're saving time by not having to code less, but having to worry about the infrastructure need to run our application. Servers, databases, all that stuff just is managed for you, and you just have to worry about writing code, which is really good because this allows you to get your application in the hands of your users much quicker, and therefore allows you to get return on your investment much faster, making more money. Everyone likes to make more money, so that's very good. The other benefit is other benefits here is basically the ability to easily add functionality to your application using IBM and partner-provided services. So as we'll see, BlueMix can application in a very short period of time, and these are both IBM provided services, so IBM's enterprise grade products that have been turned into services for the cloud, and our partners who are also providing very high quality services that are used in the enterprise as well. One of the most important parts of BlueMix is it allows you to use the languages, runtimes, and frameworks that you are most familiar with. So lots of times you'll be asked to work on a project and you'll be told you need to use this language or you need to use this framework because that's what we're using and this is the platform we're using and this is just how we do it. And if you're not familiar with the language or framework that's dictated to you, it can be kind of a hindrance to your productivity because you need to learn it, you need to make thing at all. But when you're on a time crunch, it can be a little bit of a stressful situation. But BlueMix allows you to virtually use anything, anything you want, anything you feel comfortable with, so you're as productive as you can possibly be using the things that you're most familiar with. And then lastly, one of the benefits here is SoftLayer, right? As I mentioned, BlueMix is running on top of SoftLayer, and this really comes into play when we paths like Heroku, for example, you can only deploy your application within North America or Europe. What if you want to deploy to China or Japan or some other data center or some other local data center? And as everyone probably knows, IBM is investing heavily in expanding the number of data centers out there for SoftLayer. And eventually, once we go post GA with BlueMix, you'll be able to specify different data centers around the world. Has. So for those of you who don't know, BlueMix is currently in open beta. You need to, in order to get started, you can just go to bluemix.net and register for free. And when you do register, you get 8 GB of memory to use across as many services as you want, and you can provision up to 20 services. So as long as you stay within those 2 parameters, you can do whatever you want in the open beta. You can and registering is super easy. It's been much simplified since we first went into open beta, so I encourage everyone, if you haven't already, to go to bluemix.net and to get started. So there's no way to better understand BlueMix and see what you can do with it than to actually take a look and demo it, right? So I have a very simple application I'd like to show you. But first, I'm going to jump over into the BlueMix UI, and we're going to take a little look around, quick tour of the BlueMix UI, and then we'll jump into the application. So when you log into BlueMix, this is what you'll be brought to. You'll be brought to this dashboard, and the dashboard contains kind of a basic overview of your application. So it will tell you right up front how much memory, or all your applications, sorry, it will tell you how much memory you're using, what the health of all your applications are, and basically how many services you're using. So you have some nice meters here that can help you kind of judge where you are at, right? So if I actually had an application that was not running, you'd see some big red X's here and kind of give you a heads up that things are not really going right. Let me turn off TweetDeck so we stop getting those notifications. Okay, so right below that you'll see your applications. So I have 3 applications currently deployed to BlueMix, and then I have a couple of services that I'm using in those applications down here as well. You can select any application to kind of get a deeper view of it and see what's actually happening. So you can see which build pack is. I'm going to go back to the overview tab here. I clicked the wrong thing. So you can see which runtime you're using, all the services that are using. You can get additional details about the services you want. You can add new services right from here. You can see how many instances of the application you have running and how much memory each instance is using. So let's jump out to this application. This is the application I'd like to show you today. So it's called Session Questions. And the idea behind this application is really, it has a very useful purpose for me anyways. As a developer advocate, I'm giving presentations and doing sessions at meetups and stuff like that and conferences all the time. And you know, at the end of the presentation or session, I always ask for questions. And if I'm lucky enough, I'll get a couple of people who come up and ask a question. They get up in front of everyone, ask their question. We have a nice conversation about it, etc. But you always know as a presenter that there's people sitting in the crowd that don't ask their questions. Maybe they're too embarrassed to stand up. Maybe they think their question is just not worthy of being asked in public, and they think it's kind of dumb and they don't want to ask it. So I wanted to create an app that allow anyone to easily ask their questions based on the session that I'm giving, like this one today. So if you go to sq.ng.bluemix.net, this is currently running live on BlueMix today, so anyone can go to the application. You'll see that not much here. We don't have a session. There's no active sessions yet for you to ask questions, but we can go ahead and create one. So I'm going to log in as an admin here. And only admins can create sessions, so once you log in, you see that you have the ability to create a session. So I'm going to create a session here. We'll give it the title, Intro to BlueMix, since the one that I came up with is very long. The presenter is me, Ryan Baxter. The event is BlueMix Virtual Meetup. And when is it happening? It's happening today on the 21st. I'm going to click Save. So we'll see that we now have our session created. So now if you go back to the application, you should see a session there for it. I can click on this session and I can see all the questions that are coming in. So let's pretend I'm a user now and I want to ask a question. No problem. I'm just going to go here. I'll just refresh the page here. We see here's our session. I can ask a question. So first thing I do is enter my email address. I'm going to say ryan@ryanjbaxter.com is my email, and I say, question is, how do I use build pack? We'll talk about build packs a little bit later on, but I want to know how I use a build pack. And once I submit the question, you'll see that this page automatically updates. So if people want to go there today and start asking questions, you'll see your questions should show up here. But me as the person who gave the session, I can go back and now I can answer this question very easily. So I can click the reply button here, and it brings down a nice little form that I can fill out. I can say, use the -b option in the command line. Okay, and to that person's question. So that person will now get an email with a reply. You can see if I go to my email account, ryan@ryanjbaxter.com, we'll see that I have a new email here. That says thanks for submitting a question, and it has my reply right in line. So this is all using services that are provided by BlueMix. There's a WebSocket with messaging, using RabbitMQ, which is a service storing the questions and the sessions in a Postgres database using a service on BlueMix, and it's using the SendGrid service from BlueMix to send emails. So this is all well and good, right? It works very nicely, but I want to make it easier for people to ask questions, right? So lots of times you're in a session, you don't necessarily have your laptop in front of you. What you have is your mobile device, you have your phone, you have your tablet, and you can go, and you can see people are asking questions. They're showing up here. You can go and to the site and fill it out on your mobile device, but that's not really ideal, right? It can kind of be clunky on your phone or whatever. But what would be really cool is if you could text me questions, right? So I could associate a phone number with my session, and people can text questions to me, and I can reply to them via text too. So luckily enough, we have a service that will do that. So let's talk about how we can add this service to our application. So I'm going to go back to BlueMix here, and I can say I want to add a new service. Allows you to essentially buy a phone number, and then allow you to tie an application to that phone number so it can receive SMS messages that are sent to that phone number. So I want to use this Twilio service, so I'm going to click on it. I'm going to say create and add to an application. First thing I need to do is going to add it to my SQ application, which is the application I want to add it to. First thing I want to do is give it a name, so I'll call it Twilio Questions. And then I need an account ID and auth token, and that I can get from Twilio. So I've already registered, and as soon as you register, you can register for free. You get an account ID and an auth token. So I'm just going to copy that right out of the Twilio UI here, and I'm going to paste it without the giant space at the beginning of it into the fields provided. Now I shouldn't be showing you my auth token, but I can go and change that later on so you can use it. So I paste my auth token in and click create. So as soon as you add a session, it's going to tell you that you need to restart in order to use the new service. But I don't want to do that right now because my application doesn't use it yet, and I haven't written the code. So I want to write the code, and we'll restart after I deploy the code. But you can see I now have a Twilio. My Twilio questions service is now tied to my application. So now I need to get a phone number to associate with the session. That's also very easy. I can go back to Twilio here, go to numbers. I want to buy a new number. And I'm in the 617 area code, so I'm going to search for numbers within that area code here and search for numbers that have SMS functionality. So the first one here seems good enough for me, so let's buy that one. So we'll buy that number. After I buy it, I can set it up. So basically setting up means you need to point it to your application to receive SMS messages. So you can see we're only concerned about messaging, so we can see there's this request URL, and basically what Twilio is going to do is going to make an HTTP post request to my application whenever an SMS message is sent to this number. So we haven't created our so this is the URL to my application on BlueMix, and I want to send it to the endpoint API/Twilio. Easy enough. And if I click save, I've updated my phone number settings. Okay, now all I have to do is actually write some code to receive these text messages and put them in the UI. That's also pretty easy. So I'm just going to hop over to Eclipse. Our application's written in Java. And I already have some stuff set up here. So basically I have a controller class here that's handling that endpoint. You can see we have the API/Twilio endpoint that's being handled by this class. And this do is figure out which session this question is for, and that's going to be I'll be able to find that by via the to parameter that Twilio is providing us. So you can see this message is accepting a bunch of request parameters. Some of them is who it was to, who it was from, and the body. Those are all important things for our question. So I need to find the correct session for this question to tie the question to. So I have this sessions repo variable up here, which is tied to my database that has my sessions stored in it. So I can use that to find the sessions that are associated with the number. So there's an API to call parameter, because that's the to parameter contains the phone number for the session. And this returns actually back a collection of session objects. So I'm going to create an iterable session variable here to store the sessions that are returned from the database in. Now technically there can be more than one, but really there's only going to be one. But because I'm a good developer here, I'll list here and set up a variable to store the session in. And then I'm going to say for each session, call it session. Active session, then that's the one we want. So we'll set the variable the session to. Now also because the session could actually be null, so we're going to just do a quick check to see if the session is actually added this text message and associated with that session. So the way we do that, we have a nice question object in Java project here that we can use to represent our question. Properties on this question. So we want to say, is it answered or not? Nope, it's a new question, so at the false. Then we're going to set the content. So this is the actual question itself, and that's going to be contained within the body of the text message. So we'll set the body to be the content. And then there's no email associated with this because it came in via text, but there is a phone number associated with the question, so that's going to be the from. So the text message. Question is associated with. We already have that, and it's in this session variable. And finally, we're able to save this question off to our database, and that is done by using our question repo here. So we'll say save and pass Q to our database. And lastly, and that's done via WebSocket, and we have a messaging template that we can use to do that. Also very simple. We'll say template.convert and send, and we want to post it to the topic questions, and we'll pass our question to do that. That's it. So now we're able to receive text messages from Twilio. The UI with new questions that come in. Now we need to add the ability to reply via text message, right? So when we have questions that come in via text, we want to reply back to people who send them via text as well. So that's done in our question controller. You'll see that we have a reply endpoint here that our application is using to send replies. And it already has a bunch of code here for handling the email case, right? So you can see we're sending emails, and that's using the SendGrid service. So let's add a little bit of code here to handle the text case. So we'll say if our question get number, so if it has a phone number associated with it and that's not null, then we want to reply back via text. So how can we do that? Well, we actually have, Twilio provides a nice Java API client, Java library client that will talk via REST to Twilio in order to reply via text messages. So I've already got this kind of set up in our class here that we can use. And factory. So we'll create a new SMS factory, and we'll say Twilio client get account dot factory. So that the SMS factory can use, and the factory has a create. And the map will have things like who the text message is from, who it's going to, and what the body of the text message should be. So we just need to fill out our map with those properties. So we'll create a new map that has a string to string. We'll call it params. We just need to set some value params.put, and we're going to say who is the text message from. Well, it's from the phone number tied to our session, so we can use our question we have and get number for our session, and then we need to say who it's to, and that's to the author of the question. So that we can just say q.getNumber, and for the person who sent in the question, and then we just need to do give it the body of the text message. So we can say param body, and the value is going to be this reply object here, has the that we want to send back to that person. Our params object to our create method in Twilio, and this throws an exception, so we're going to surround this in a try catch, and that's pretty much it. That's now we've added the functionality to actually we need to do is add the ability to just, when we create a new session, we need to add a field to place a phone number in that session. So we're just going to write a little bit of HTML to do that. Nothing complicated here. Our HTML, as you probably noticed, was using Bootstrap. So we're going to write a little. The JavaScript framework underneath this application is using AngularJS. So we're just going to throw in a little Angular as well. Nothing complicated. So we create a div. We're going to give it the label. We'll call it number. Okay, and then put our phone number. It's going to have the class equal to form control. Kind of give everyone an idea of what they need to enter here. And the phone number should be in the format +1 and then the phone number. So 555. To a model that we have, and this is somewhere where the Angular comes in. So we're going to say that this field is tied to the number field in our model of our session, and that's it. So we've added our HTML, we've added our API, and now we're ready to get this up and live in the cloud so everyone can use it. So we just need to push it to the cloud. So I'm going to use a command line tool, which we're going to talk a little bit about in more detail later on in the session. But it's called the CF tool. Command called push, and this is how you push your application to the cloud. Actually, before we need to do that, we actually need to build our application. So we need to build our application, construct a jar or war or whatever you're going to deploy to Cloud Foundry. So we've written some new code. We need to build a new jar. Our project is using Maven, so we're just going to run which will construct the jar file for us. And I'm going to actually run that again because I want to make sure that we actually get clean just the old version and create the new version. And then after that's done, you can see it runs pretty quickly. We're going to do our CF push command. So let me just clear this. So CF push, and that stands for Cloud Foundry push, and the name of our application, which is SQ, up in BlueMix. And once I run that, this is going to actually start to now deploy our application up to BlueMix. You can see the first thing it's going to do is upload this jar file to BlueMix. Great. So what is actually happening? Well, we can see a little bit more of what's happening here by also using another command called cf log. right? So we'll say CF logs SQ, and what this is going to allow us to do is to essentially tail the log files for the application up in BlueMix. So I can see exactly what's happening at BlueMix. I can see some people actually hitting the application. I see some output from the application about people returning CSS and stuff like that. But eventually we will see, after the upload completes, that we start to deploy the application to BlueMix. So this is going to take really large, 32 megabytes. So you can see that it just finished uploading. And now it's starting to rebind our services that we're using. So we're binding the SendGrid service for emails, the RabbitMQ service for our messaging, the SQL database for our, or Postgres database for our data store, and the Twilio service for our text messaging. And now what it's going to do is it's seeing that we've uploaded a jar file, so it will automatically detect that, okay, I need a JDK in order to run this jar file. So it's going to download that stuff, and then it's going to take the Java JDK, its container and its libraries, and our jar file, and it's going to upload it to a VM. And once it gets to this VM, it will now start to try to start the application. So should be some interesting stuff starting to happen now in our logs. So you can see if we switch back to the logs tab, our application's using Spring. Spring is starting up, and Spring is going to start to do a whole bunch of stuff. Right? It's going to initialize a database. It's going to create database tables. It's going to talk to the RabbitMQ service. So it's going to take a little bit of while to get itself up and running and situated. But once it does, we should be able to have our application now up and running within a couple minutes. So all this happens, you know, in a couple minutes. During a presentation like this, you'd like it to happen a little bit faster, but it can only go as fast as the internet's going to allow us to go here. And but it is live. We are doing this live, so you have to bear with us here. So it's almost done. Should see in a second here that it is up and running. Yep. So as you can see, our app has started, and it took less than 47. So we got our application up and running. Our CF push command has completed. It says that it's up and running. It tells you the URL. We already know the URL. So let's head back to our application here, and we will refresh. Actually, let's go back to the home page here. And I'm going to log out and log back in just so we're not confusing anything here. And I'll log back in as my admin. I'm going to do the same thing again. I need to recreate my session, so we can do that. So we'll say intro to BlueMix. The event is BlueMix, and the date is today, just like we did before. And now you can see we have our new field for our number. So we're going to copy that number right out of Twilio here. So this is the number we bought from Twilio that we want to use for our session. So we're going to paste that in there. We're going to click Save. So now our session is up and active. And we can do the same thing that we did before, but this time I want to do it via text. Over to Google Voice here. And I'm going to send a text message via Google Voice just so everyone can see what's happening. So I'll, again, paste in my phone number here and say, how do I deploy, and click Send. And you can see now we have our question that I just sent via text message shows up here in our application, and I can reply just like I did before. If it came in via email, I can say, you know, use the CF push command line, and click reply. And now if we head back to our Google Voice inbox here, we see we have the text message that we sent and received right from our phone number here. So if you guys want to start sending text messages and try it out, you can. This is the phone number. So, oops, sorry, I just lost it. There we go. This is the phone number, 617-849-9816. I imagine if for those internationally, it might charge you some money to do that, but feel free to do it if you want, and this will come up and automatically update, and we'll jump back to that at the end of the session. So let's head back over the slides and kind of talk a little bit about what we did. gist that how easy it is to add services. You notice I didn't have to do anything with VMs or anything like that. I just added the service, I wrote my code, and I pushed my app, and I was up and running. And that's the kind of pattern that we want to enforce with using a PaaS like BlueMix, right? So no longer, if you need a database service, you don't have to worry about creating a database and maintaining that database. BlueMix will take care of that for you. Just add the service, you write some code, and you deploy your app and you use it. So you heard me mention Cloud Foundry while I was doing that demo. And so why was I talking about Cloud Foundry, and why was I using this command line called CF that stands for Cloud Foundry? Well, BlueMix is actually built upon an open source project called Cloud Foundry. And IBM is a heavy contributor to this project along with several other companies and organizations. And because it's becoming so popular, IBM is leading the effort to create a foundation around the Cloud Foundry project so that every company that has a stake in the project can help manage the direction of the project. There's really cool benefits to using an open source project, as there always is, besides documentation and samples for Cloud Foundry are completely relevant and can be used with BlueMix. So, you know, lots of times you may be Googling something and you say, how do I do XYZ thing with BlueMix? You might not find a lot of information, but you can always try, how do I do XYZ thing with Cloud Foundry, and you might find a ton of information. And all the information you find is completely relevant to BlueMix, which is really cool. So that means that other concepts, which I talked about here in the demo, are coming from Cloud Foundry, and those are like things like build packs, services, the command line interface, scaling. All this stuff comes from Cloud Foundry. So let's talk a little bit about a runtime and a build pack, right? I mentioned build pack during the demo. I just mentioned it a second ago. What is a build pack? So a build pack is essentially how BlueMix supports virtually any runtime you want to use, right? So this was a pseudo standard that was originally came up with by Heroku, which is really cool. Cloud Foundry adopted it because it's a very nice way to do this. And essentially, BlueMix has 4 built-in build packs. One for Java, Liberty, Node, Sinatra, and Ruby on Rails. But that doesn't mean that those are the only languages or runtimes that you can use. You can use, like I said, virtually any. And the way we do this, is via community build packs. But when you have a built-in build pack like the Java one, the Node, or Sinatra, or Ruby on Rails, all that means is that when you push an application using one of those build packs to BlueMix, you don't have to tell us about it. BlueMix will automatically detect that what build pack it needs to use, get the build pack, and install it for you. If you're going to use something else like PHP or Python or Go or Scala or something like that, you need to just specify which build pack you want us to use, and you can still push your application. So this is kind of a semi-complete list of all the languages, frameworks, and runtimes and containers that we support in BlueMix. So everything from Java to Grails to Node to Play to PHP to Python to Scala to Ruby to Go. And then if you're interested in types of containers to run these applications, if you're a Tomcat guy, you can use Tomcat. If you like to use Jetty, you can use Jetty. If you want to use Liberty, you can use Liberty. If you want to run your PHP app on Nginx or you want to run it on Apache, you have those choices as well. So a wide range of things that you can released an update to the Java build pack, which has support for JBoss in it. If you want to choose JBoss, and I heard that there's a build pack for Oracle WebLogic. So there's new stuff being added all the time. If the thing that you're looking for isn't already here, it's possible to create a build pack for the language, framework, or runtime that you want to use. So what does a build pack look like? Basically, it has the runtime container and some libraries inside of it, and your application code sits on top of that. So if we take a specific build pack, for example, the Java build pack, the Cloud Foundry Java build pack, it will install the JDK, it will install Tomcat, Jetty, or Liberty, and then whatever additional libraries might come with that library, that build pack. There's no rule that says you need to have libraries in your build pack. Some build packs contain libraries, some don't. For example, the PHP build pack has an option to include the Mongo library with it. But oftentimes you'll find that you'll also need to include libraries within your application code, right? Because there's going to be libraries that you want to use that aren't in the build pack. and that gets pushed along with your application code. So libraries kind of cross the border between application and build pack at some points, but you should read the documentation for the build pack you're going to be using to see what additional libraries are included by default. Services, right? So we saw how easy it is to add a service to your application and then take advantage of that service. And that's the kind of, that same pattern, regardless of which service you're using, is the pattern you want to follow. So we have in BlueMix a wide variety of services that you can choose from. The screenshot here is kind of old. It's actually not that old, but it's old enough to be outdated already. There's many more services than when I took this screenshot. Everything to mobile services, to third-party things like Twilio and Pitney Bowes and other stuff. And we're always adding more and more services at all times. So expect that list to increase and always check back. But basically, like I said, the basic pattern you want to do is you select a service, the plan you want to use, and then you bind it to your application. So it's important to know what it means to bind a service to an application. All that really means is it provides you with an instance or some way of using that service. And when you bind a service to an application, what it does is it provides you with the credentials to access that service. So you saw when we did the Twilio service during the demo that we entered the credentials, our account ID and auth token, but some services will automatically create the credentials for you. So for example, if you wanted to use the Elephant SQL service to provide it for a Postgres database, Elephant SQL would just generate user ID and password and a URL to the service to go ahead and use. You don't have to enter anything. And this information is stored in an environment variable called vcap services. So what you do is you go in your application code, which I didn't show today, but the application code is going to the vcap services environment variable, reading what's there, and then extracting out the credentials that are there. So it's a way of is a way of abstracting away things like credentials from your application. The vcap services environment is an object, so it's just parsing some JSON. It's fairly easy to do in any language you choose to build your application in. And there's actual, for Java and Node, there are actually libraries that will help you do this. So you can kind of eliminate some repetitive coding and make your life a little bit easier as a developer. There may be libraries for other languages, I just haven't come across them, but I know there's some for Java and Node. The other big piece that we used during the demo was the Cloud Foundry command line. Like, that's how we pushed our application to the cloud. It's how we monitor the logs. And this is one of the pieces from Cloud Foundry that's completely reusable with BlueMix, since Cloud Foundry is underneath BlueMix. So anything you want to do with BlueMix, you want to push an application, start an application, stop an application, restart an application, delete the application, create, bind, and unbind services. So during the demo, I did it in the UI. I create the service and bound the service to the application in the UI. You could have done the same thing via the command line. You can view and tail logs, so you can see logs like we saw in the demo. I can view my logs. If I wasn't tailing the logs when we deployed our application and I wanted to see the logs, I could do that too. So everything you would ever want to do with BlueMix can be done via the command line interface. This is the tool that developers are going to want to become familiar with and will be most productive with. I find myself being much more productive using the command line interface than I do using the UI in the browser. So this is definitely something you want to learn. There's some very nice documentation out on the Cloud Foundry. Everything the command line can do, and the link here is at the bottom. So pushing your applications, right? Keep calm and push your apps, right? This is really cool stuff. This is where the CF push command came in. And just a couple things of note here. When you do use the CF push command, it will automatically, by default, upload everything within the current directory that you're within when you execute the command. So for applications like Node.js applications, this might be what you want. But if you're a Java developer and you don't want to upload everything, right? You want to upload your compiled code that's either in a jar or a WAR file. You need to tell the CF. Just one kind of gotcha that you have to keep in mind when you're pushing your applications, because you want to make sure that you can specify just the single file you want in the cases that you need to do that, or else you may run into problems when you push your application. It may not be able to figure out, what type of application or how to run your application or anything like that. So keep that in mind when using that command. Sometimes your CF push commands can become very verbose. So I have a very good example here of something that's kind of long and complicated. We've specified an application name, we specified the WAR file we want to push, we specified the build back we want to use, how many instances, how much memory. Right, and error prone. So the way to solve this is using what's called a manifest file. And basically what you do is take everything that's in the command line, you put it in a manifest file, and you simplify your CF push command. And I've written a nice tool that can generate your manifest file for you, since it's written in YAML, which is kind of a weird syntax. So if you're not used to YAML, you can go to this tool, cfmanandgen.ng.bluemix.net, and that will you can fill out a form, and it will generate the manifest file for you. Just a quick example of what a manifest file looks like. You can transform the above CF push command into the below manifest file, and once you've done that, you just do CF push, and it will automatically use the manifest file. That's what actually we did in the demo. That's why our command line was so simple. We're using a manifest file under the cover for the application. Logging, we saw this in the demo. Logging is always going to be your first step to figure out what might be wrong with your application. Your application's logs are written to a standard error and standard out log file. And if you jump in the UI, you can, in BlueMix, you can actually see this very easily. So if we go to Files and Logs here, once we jump into the application we want to look at the log file for, you'll see a standard error and a standard out. Luckily, I have nothing in standard error, but we should be a bunch of stuff here in the standard out log file. You can see this is all the stuff in the standard out log file. So you can always view logs in the UI like this, or you can do it like we did in the demo where you use the CF logs command. And CF logs by itself will just tail. You can use CF logs -- recent to show just a recent set of log files. And when you use the CF logs command, it actually aggregates both the standard error and standard out log files together and streams them down to your client. So you don't have to specify which log file you want to use when you use CF logs. You just specify, you just say CF logs, and the aggregate is shown to you in your command line. Scaling. So scaling is very important, obviously. We didn't really show that today, but I'll show you what it looks like in the UI in a second. But BlueMix allows you to both scale your application horizontally and vertically within minutes, right, or less. So if the load increases or decreases, you may want to adjust the number of instances that you have provisioned for your application, and you can easily do the ability to auto-scale, but only for applications that are using the Java Liberty build pack. If you're using a different build pack, you will not be able to auto-scale. You'll have to do it manually. Support for other runtimes is coming as we go along here, but right now we only have the service available for the Java Liberty build pack. Same thing if you need more memory. If you find that the memory is your application is using more memory than you thought, and you want to give it a little bit more memory, you can easily do that as well. So in the UI, you can do that by just going here, and you can see how many instances you currently have running. So if I want to scale up to 10 instances, I just type in 10, click Save, and BlueMix will automatically create 9 additional instances of my application and stand them up. And with a load balancer in front of it, and all that stuff is taken care of. So it will randomly select which instance of my application to send a request to. Same thing with the memory. If I want to start to increase the memory of my application, I just increase it, and nice little chart on the left updates and shows you what you will have available after you do this. If I go like way over the memory limit, you'll see it goes nice and red here, so saying that I can't do that because I've gone over my 8 gigs of memory. And then you can just click Save, and again, it will increase the memory for you. One other thing that I'd like to point out here, coming towards the end here, is DevOps services. So one of the distinct advantages to using BlueMix is its tight integration with what is formerly known as Jazz Hub, now called DevOps services. And but one of the coolest features, and why it's important for BlueMix, is the ability to deploy your application right from your browser. So if say I create a project for my application in DevOps services, and I upload the application there, check in my source, right from the DevOps services to BlueMix. And where this would really be cool is, like, say you're out and about and someone calls you and says, hey, there's this small problem with our application. I need you to fix it, and all you have is like your tablet with you. Well, you can go right to DevOps services. It will automatically build and then deploy your application right to BlueMix right from there. So it gives you a nice continuous integration, continuous delivery feedback loop, and it's tightly integrated with BlueMix, so it will deploy right to BlueMix from DevOps service. So that's really cool, and really nice stuff. So if you haven't checked it out, I suggest you check it out. There's some we could probably do a whole session on this, so I won't dive too deep into it, but maybe for a future virtual meetup we'll talk more about this stuff. Resources. So you want to find out more information about BlueMix. So the first thing is to go to the documentation, and you can find the documentation right at the top of the BlueMix.net. So right here, there's a docs link. It will bring you right out to our documentation. And that's works that has a ton of information. And if you go to developer.ibm.com/BlueMix, you'll see all the information there. There's a great number of sample apps and tutorials, and these are increasing every day. Actually, there's an internal thing going on inside of IBM right now to get a lot of content created, which is really cool. With the code, which is really cool. So if you want to walk through something, building your application from nothing to the end, tutorials are really nice. Other useful things there on DeveloperWorks are the developer forum. This is where, if you have questions, you have comments, you need help in some way or another, you should go to this forum. And then if you can't find it, ask your own question. And there's a bunch of IBMers and other people in the community monitoring the forum, answering questions all the time. It's very similar to Stack Overflow if you're familiar with Stack Overflow. There's also a blog there as well, so as me and a bunch of IBMers are posting blog posts there, I cross-post everything I put on my personal blog to the blog. BlueMix, and follow at IBM BlueMix, which is the official IBM BlueMix Twitter account. And lastly, if you're looking for the stuff that I showed today, so the slides are available on SlideShare. So if you go to SlideShare and search for me, you should find me. And if you go to, we have a nice organization, BlueMix organization up on GitHub. So if you go to GitHub, and you'll find the code for the session questions application that I demoed today there as well. So with that, I'd like to say thank you, and thanks for attending our first meetup, and hope to have many more. We have a couple of minutes for questions, I think, so you can, I believe, ask questions in this Hangout, I believe. Let me jump back there. Let's just turn off the screen share. And I don't know if there's any questions here. Okay, so someone asked a question: are SAP, SAS, Oracle, etc., providing their services integrated with BlueMix? If not yet, is it intention in the longer term? So we will. I can't comment specifically on specific companies. So we will work with whoever wants to deploy services, whether they're cloud services or otherwise, to BlueMix. There's a whole process for doing that, and that's way too long to go over right now. But yes, the other part of this question, and you didn't specify whether these were cloud services or on-premise services. So lots of times people have SAP deployed on-premise, and they're premise within applications they deploy to the cloud. And we do have a way of doing this as well. If you look at the catalog of services in Cloud Foundry, you will see that there's a service for cast iron, and cast iron is again a whole nother presentation in itself, has a way of connecting to on-premise services and providing a secure way for your application to access those services on-premise. So if you have things like SAP or Oracle on-premise and you want to connect to that stuff and use the information within your cloud-based applications, you can do that as well. So that's kind of my answer for that. Let's see, actually, if there was anything that came in. Did anyone text in questions? Someone did. Demo quick mobile app. We'll do a demo of a quick mobile app. I'm sorry, people on the Hangout can't see that I'm looking now at the session questions app. So I'm looking at the session questions app that people might have texted in. So someone asked, can you demo a quick mobile app? I can't. I don't have time to do that, obviously now. But we will do a future virtual meetup if you want on mobile services. There's a whole set of mobile services that are part of BlueMix, and one of the primary use cases is for mobile backends as a service on BlueMix. So we will queue up a future virtual meetup on that specific topic, and we can talk about mobile apps all day long. Is Spring Hibernate DB a build pack that is available? If not, how's all the configuration done? So there is great support for Spring and Hibernate and stuff like that within the Cloud Foundry Java build pack. There is also support for it within the Java Liberty build pack. Although I have not yet gotten around to testing the application that I just wrote on this application that's using Spring and Hibernate on the Java Liberty build pack. But I know it's for sure possible using the Cloud Foundry Java build pack, so it's all available to do today. You can deploy it to BlueMix. That's how I got this application running. And the last question, yes, I will post the application code. It's up on GitHub. Like I said, if you go to GitHub.com. Hopefully. So if you look for me on GitHub, my username is Ryan J. Baxter, the same as my Twitter handle. And you'll see that we have an organization here for codename BlueMix, and the code for today is right here. Proof. Okay, so that looks like it's oh, hold on, there's a whole bunch of other questions here. So how do I publish a service for reuse for others? So Stephen, I know you are an internal IBMer. You can find me internally, and the process for internal people and the process for external people are completely different. So reach out to me internally, and I can get you that information. I will try to gather. Maybe we can do a future meetup on the cloud for external people on the cloud marketplace, and how you start to get your services in the cloud, IBM Cloud Marketplace, and then eventually get them in the BlueMix catalog as well. Are there plans for a Worklight server as a runtime on BlueMix? That question I actually don't know the answer to. That will be something we will cover in the future mobile BlueMix webcast meetup. That will be part of our mobile meetup. I don't know exactly. I don't know enough about Worklight to answer that question. So we will get an answer for you though. Can you check the session app? I asked one there. Let's see. Any ones that I did not see? Nope. So I answered all those there. Okay, and that's it. So that's all the questions. All right, so thanks everyone. I hope everyone enjoyed it. If you have feedback and want to see specific topics, like mobile is obviously a key one for people, other topics that you might be interested in, please let me know. You think different formats for the meetup might work better, reach out to me on Twitter or my blog or whatnot. And thanks everyone for attending. Thanks. Bye.